I think one of the main things that I can apply here is one thing my dad always told me was, Georgia, slow down. And so that was something that really spoke to me, because I like to do things from the next. But what in learning the slowing down pace, you are the one who has to be able to look and see that you're in position to receive. And what that means is you're in position to receive from God. So you always are aligning yourself on that field as that in that playbook as where you need to be so that you can make the touchdown.
Hey guys, welcome back. Last week we had Georgia and Jessica with us, and we have them again this week. If you missed last week's episode, we'll wait for you. Go ahead and catch up. But we're going to jump back into our discussion here about mental health. And remember, they are our first guests that are repeating on Door Church Connect. So they have a lot of good things to say. Pastor Warner and our whole staff really have preached on mental and emotional health issues, and they've done it quite frequently. And one of the discoveries, and it's not surprising that there is a lot of this issue taking root on college campuses, and it's accelerated. The book, The Coddling of the American Mind, which is right here, how good intentions and bad ideas are setting up a generation for failure. The author talks about these bad ideas and how they're contributing to full-on mental illness. One of the things the author talks about is how the untruth of emotional reasoning is actually really having negative effects on people. And I remember I worked for someone whose son went to the University of Kansas, and they had to pull him out of school within, I believe, the first semester. He had just a nervous breakdown as soon as he left home. And that's a lot of the things that we are seeing. Rene Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am," but I think today it's more like I feel, therefore it is. One of the epic Stoics from back in the day said, "What really frightens us and dismays us is not external events themselves, but the way in which we think about them. Yeah. It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance." So I think what's happening here is kind of like logical process. The way we logically process things is MIA, and everybody's just kind of just going with the emotions. What would you say to someone whose life is being dominated, especially young people's life being dominated by runaway emotions? And how do you deal with people in that condition? What do you say to them?
I think it's important to acknowledge, as you said, the MIA, to really acknowledge the emotion itself, to acknowledge that it's happening, because what happens is when you create something to be so magnified and so big in your head, then it becomes to take a character on. So what happens is, first, it's this one thing that you see that's a problem. But then because you're so scared of the problem, it causes it to magnify. And then because it causes it to magnify, you're therefore running away from it. But the thing is that the only way to get true healing and true breakthrough is to go towards it. And so when you go towards it, things get smaller. And so as even the song says, turn your eyes on Jesus and the things of the world will grow strangely dim. So when you turn your eyes, when you shift your attention onto the situation and you analyze that specific thing and no longer give it this life that you've given it of a fear to be had over you, but a fear to actually work through and to know that as I go towards this, it's going to bring me freedom. Because see, running away only presents it. People will be like, I moved to another state. It's still there. I went to a different house. It's still there. I went to a different husband. It's still there. I went to a different wife. It's still there. It does not matter. It will follow you. So the best thing to do is to actually acknowledge that it's happening and then be able to tackle it one entity at a time in that realm. The other thing is that the notion, I think, so I am, is really interesting, because when thinking is involved, it also also resonates with your feelings. Yes. So first you start to think, then you start to feel, and then in turn you start to also believe. So the main thing is to realize, what are you actually thinking, and what is this a truth, your truth, or is it the real truth? Because people think that the truth is just the truth. No, there's your version of the truth and what is really going on. And so in relation to actually being able to walk towards it, you're able to see what the real truth of that situation is, and then to start walking yourself through why you even thought that way to begin with, So I think that's the first thing, is walking them towards the situation, period.
So have you ever had to confront someone and say, look, you're looking at this way too emotionally, or this is your default position all the time?
Yes.
So if you've done that, what did they say?
Well, first time, everyone's different. So the first person might meet you with a lie. So they'll try to tell a lie out of it by, there's the avoidant liar. There's so many different categories of liars as psychology would have it. But some of 8 would be the avoidant liar, who first tries to say, well, what I really think is going on is in, 1991 when this happened. No, that's not what it was. It's what actually is happening today, and what really is resonating with how your attitude has never shifted, how you have never forgiven A, B, and C. And then, well, I think I've kind of forgiven them, but no. So they'll try to combat with you back and forth. So it's interesting when it comes to the mind, because there's walls that people have put up. So you're kind of like going through this maze with them until they finally realize, oh, you got me. I can't hide anymore. Once they realize they're able to be vulnerable, because that's the thing with when it comes to emotions. People utilize emotions as if they're being vulnerable. But it's not. It's a mask. It's a mask of what they wear. Oh, I'm happy. Oh, I think
Jesus had a word for that.
Yeah. So they mask it, but when you go into detail with them, they're hiding behind it because they don't want you to actually see what's there. Vulnerability requires that you reveal and unveil all, and that this person that's hearing it is either going to receive it or then reject you. So they immediately can kind of like teeter between, am I going to be truthful here? Am I going to reveal it here? Are we going to go here? And then when finally that wall breaks down, which God always does it, it's so brilliant how it happens. And it is a gift that I have to do that in different ways. But however, when that does happen, then they're real, they're raw, they're real, they're open, and they're like, this is the truth. This is really what happened. All these other fake truths that I was making up, it's not true. It's what I've told people. It's what I've told myself to help me, to mask. So it's pretty much taking off all these masks until you get to the person.
Original.
Yeah, the original. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, and his book, and I think where I first started reading it is Flying Back from London. And it really, I was underlying and highlighting so many things, is that he calls it the 3 great untruths. So it's actually mirroring what you're saying about the different lies that people tell themselves. And so that untruth is that feelings, always trust your feelings. And so those feelings become the wall that they hide behind. And you take that, you add to the fact that it's the environment of the college campus. And you can easily see how it's a breeding ground for a lot of these things. And the statistics are there, how whether it's anxiety disorders or depression are increasing right there on the college campus. And so he says it's because of the untruths that they've embraced. And what really caught my attention is he starts talking about the different generations, this one being Generation Z. Now, I would like, this is an appeal, and that is whoever's making up all these generational labels.
Oh, man.
You've got the baby boomers, then the millennials. You tell me if I'm right.
No, it was a baby boomer, early baby boomers, late baby boomers, Generation X,
Yeah.
Generation Y, who's also the millennials.
Okay.
Then we have Generation Z.
And then I've heard Generation Alpha, because after Z, you've got to start all over again. And they're 6 years old or something, or 5. But what caught my attention, they said Generation Z are those born between 1995 and 2012. So this is very current. The stuff that they're, as you said in the first episode, the stuff that they're inviting into their house, I thought what was brilliant to me is the 2 dominant features that they talked about. The outcome of this untruth is, number one, these are young adults in all, ways. They should be growing up.
Right.
But they said they're growing up much slower. And they talked about prolonged adolescence, that you get to be an adolescent until you're 25, 26, 27, that they're deliberately putting off some of the rites of passage from childhood into adulthood, and they're taking place much later. And I can think of the most obvious one, which is marriage. And let me make some people mad, is that I am a proponent of people getting married when they're young.
Amen.
Yeah, because it produces a thing that's missing, and that's called maturity. And but so they're prolonged adolescence. They're not growing up. But the other thing that fits into our discussion is that they're experiencing a rapid rise in anxiety and depression, and they've got graphs that show that fact. And so one of the quotes that I took from that book is, they said colleges were not the primary cause of the wave of mental illness among their students. Rather, the students were seeking help, were part of a much larger national wave of adolescent anxiety and depression, unlike anything seen in modern times. Colleges were struggling to cope with the rapidly rising number of students who were suffering from mental illness, primarily, and this fits into your wheelhouse, what they called mood disorders.
Yeah. We have had a few clients, not a huge percentage, but a few clients that have struggled with this mood disorder and this up and down fluctuation of, one day they're happy, it's good, we talk to them and, send them on to their way. And then the next day it's, okay, this happened. And so it's, again, this fluctuating behavior system. And they, before getting the tools, they hadn't really known how to work through it, or, okay, what do I need to do? And a lot of that came from discipline, really disciplining themselves in certain areas. Like we talked about the hierarchy of it. How are you starting off your day? Are you starting with prayer and reading and really, starting it right and worshiping God? What are you doing? A lot of people, they flip on their phone the first thing they wake up, or, they're tending to the kids or whatever. So really taking dominion as well and putting that system has really allowed them to kind of just take a step back and not have this fluctuating behavior of I'm happy one day, I'm sad the next. It's okay this day, it's bad the next.
Yeah. And I think the other one too was that we've really been able to, it's so amazing to what Jesus did, because he showed people. He didn't just speak on it, but when he came, he explained and he showed them what to do. And so one of the things that's been amazing for Mental Finesse is to be able to actually walk people through and to do hand holding handholding in the beginning, of actually showing them step by step for their day and working it through with them of what that needs to look like that's going to be the most effective for them, and then adjusting it as sees fit, However, in doing so, this really does establish them off on the right start, because so they're able to say, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I want my day to go. And this is what I'm going to do to carry that out.
Yeah.
And what we find is one of the main components that and it's so crazy, especially for Christians, and I will say each client that we talk to, and we have a lot of clients now that are Christians, will say, I will ask them, when you pray, what do you say? So we go into all the depths of what their prayer is. And so I say, go ahead and pray, because one of the highlights of Mental Finesse is we say, you came to us, we're praying for you. That's what it is. Whether you believe in the sun god or the moon god or the ocean god, we're praying to the one and only God. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me let you know again where the source is, just in case you were confused, it's not the fish of the sea. So I literally sit down to ask them and walk them through and hear what they're praying. And each time they will start praying and stuff like that, they'll pray for their wife, they'll pray for their kids, and, maybe just a few little things, but they never, and I say never on purpose, seriously, they never pray for themselves. And so I say, okay, so you didn't pray for yourself at all. And then I'll say, go ahead and pray for yourself then. I don't know what to say was one, or
Lord
help my
bless
day,
me.
or bless me, or give me this or whatever. But they don't know intricately how to pray for themselves. And so one of the things that's so interesting, again, with the enemy is so precise, is that imagine this: you're in battle and you're getting all cut up and you're getting stabbed, and like someone comes and punches you in the head, a horse comes and tries to run over you, all this stuff, and then you're like, hey, can someone give me a helmet? Hello, can someone give me a sword? So what I'm finding is people get into the battle, and then they're asking, they start praying. This was for all of them, especially the men. This is very interesting. They start praying when the problem arises. So that's already after the fact, baby. Like now you're sitting down and you're having major issues, and you're like, Lord, please send me your helmet of salvation and the sword. Like, okay. So to avoid that is to pray over your mind prior to, not making this be secondary, but primary, primary care, just like your segment about, is it well with your soul, and really taking care of your soul and understanding that in order for you to be able to combat anything, you first have to have your mind engaged in your shield of faith, your helmet of salvation. You have to be able to go out and be able to attack. And so that's one of the problems that we really found was their hierarchy system. And then them from there, their day just spiraling. They don't have any control of their day. So really walking them through that and what their day looks like and how it needs to be. Parents getting up earlier. The necessity of that is so great. And movement. People, when you have any sort of emotion, the ability to just hop on social media or to just spew it out is very instantaneous. However, the ability to pause is the best thing you can ever do. To pause. Yeah. And in that pause, you're able to have a recalibration, like Surrey will say system, redirecting, so it's like, it's redirecting you, recalibrating you to go, wait, I'm not going to cuss this person out, yell at this person, attack this person, make a horrible post about that person. Let me stop. In stopping, you readjust. And in stopping, you stop yourself from doing a lot of crazy things. Because as you said, feelings are not to be relied upon. The thing about feelings is they're fleeting.
Yeah.
People will say to me all the time, I'll say, okay, you need to it's time to get up. You need to make sure you work out. We do workout calls for people. And we're like, okay, 5 a.m. You said you wanted to get up today. Time to get up, time to work out. Oh, well, I don't feel like working. I didn't ask if you feel like it, because feelings come and go. The thing is, me and Jessica are outside at 4 a.m. in the cold. We've been running all year throughout the cold, the rain, all of the things. It's not about feeling. It's about once you're out there, it readjusts your system. When you tell your mind something that you're going to do, your body follows suit. Right. So the main thing is planning accordingly, putting your clothes out the night before. so you can't stall. Having all your things ready to go helps people move into it, but not going off of your feeling, because that's not lasting.
Yeah, I never, in all the years of racing hand cycles and training, I never felt like doing it ever. In fact, my brain would constantly give me a multitude of excuses why I didn't need to do that. So, when you made reference to the whole armor of God, the time to put that on, you're saying is not when you're in the middle of the battle.
Right.
It's prior. That this is part of your daily expression or discipline.
Yes, and then you find your reward factor in that. For instance, with your working out component, when you finally went out and you did it, you're outside, you're experiencing things, it's beautiful, you might see the sunrise, you're like, oh, man, look at the birds, all these things. That is an intrinsic reward because you made a choice.
Yeah, the endorphins kick in.
Yes, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And so that is the same thing with anything. You might not feel like doing something, but don't be confused. Once you actually get into it, that's when you actually develop the senses of, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And you'll remember that. You'll remember and hold on to that. Just like when you pray for yourself, you'll see the example of what happens in your day. Then you're like, man, I have to do this all day. I have to do this every day. I understand, it's necessary.
Yeah, I reference off of the scripture in Proverbs. It says, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Now, that's not mocking someone and saying, what kind of a wimp are you? Come on, you should be stronger. But it's saying, wait a minute, the time to prepare for the day of adversity, which, hey, it's coming to everyone, is not when it's coming down and it is full throttle. The time to prepare is before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with this whole event, with the pandemic.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, no, this is happening. This has been happening.
Yeah.
Now you are, and now you're trying to get your house in order, or you're not, or you're running away from it. So it's the time is now. The time is before, not after,
Yeah. So you're playing right into one of the things, we'll get to it in just a bit, but the whole idea of self-control, which the Bible talks about a great deal, but we live in an age where, that's ignored. But where I'd like to pivot right here is to, okay, we've talked about the college campus. Let's just for a minute talk to young people. And so, Gabe, you're part of this discussion. So go from just being co-host to also being a guest along with Georgia and Jessica. What triggered me was, and I think I sent you the article, was an article which uses Jesus's famous words, "Let the children come to me." And, I have to confess that I've basically always read that verse referring to like infants and baby dedications. That when we have a baby dedication, see us, we're fulfilling, or maybe children's church,
Sure.
We're fulfilling the admonition, let the children come. But I think children take on a wider meaning today that incorporates, whether it's millennials, iGen, Generation Z, whatever, is that let them come to me. They need to listen to Jesus and not just what the world is feeding them. And so maybe my question first to you, Gabe, is in light of what our school system, our media, and our culture is constantly pumping out, what are you seeing that is very common and unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, just you guys are talking, and what Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spoke as a child, I comprehended as a child. But now that I've become a man, I put away the childish things. So he objectifies his own immaturity. So what I'm seeing is like what Georgia was talking about, soccer mom going nuts on the social. She's supposed to be the adult in the room. So what I'm seeing with the young people is that they're past that. And what scares me, and maybe I just, think about things too much, but I think that what I'm seeing is rational brinksmanship, where you can be as crazy as you want to be and put it out on social and everybody's going to gas you up and say that was great. But you just said some crazy stuff there's nothing coherent in your rants. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that I'd get sent to my room for in 1997. Mm-hmm. Now you're getting big ups from everybody and their mother. And just while I'm ranting, if you're an adult and you're enabling people to do that, think about that.
It's a demon.
Go ahead.
No, it's just plain and simple. It's a demon. It's a demon spirit that wants to control and to manipulate. And then when it finds itself amongst other people who haven't dealt with that same thing in their lives, it finds another one. It leaches onto another. And the other one goes, yes, good idea. And they all support it and echo it because it is what has been dormant or not anymore and now exposed. So these are things that people do not deal with. They have no rationale, as you're saying. And then they continue to dispute it out. And the other people who haven't dealt with their rationales either are feeling like, this is great. I have a soapbox.
Them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is so demonic, it's such an attack.
So when I look at Jessica and Georgia, both of you today, you were raised in church. Your testimony is very unique. In the sense that people can't come to you, and I have that, this is literal, I have that leg up, because I only have one. Is they can't come to you whining about their upbringing, how, they missed out, and this wasn't there, and this was, and I think here you are swimming in the waters of emotional, mental health, helping people navigate and think about what they're saying, what they're feeling, how they're reacting. Is you didn't get there without some real combat. You had to fight some things in this area that we're talking about to be able then to turn around and help others.
Yeah, it's time to call things out for what they were was the first thing. I think I have to say also honestly, when me and Jessica talk to each other all the time, we think about how our minds were built differently than other people because we look at why we did certain things, and it's only God completely, because the choices that we made them in what we thought made complete sense, where other people were like, you're weird, So, for instance, my dad, even if he was preaching, there would be people that they were having a party or they're drinking, having a kegger, they're going to smoke weed, whatever it was. And me and Jessica were just like not intrigued. I ask them, why would I want my mind to feel like that? Like, why would I want to wake up the next morning and throw up? Or why would I want to be foggy and out of it? I didn't understand stuff like that. And they thought it was odd that I didn't understand that. So I've always been in the world, but never a part of the world. And I see that God did that to me on purpose, because I would just see things in a completely different way and watch as people were being pulled around by different spirits and attacks. And I didn't know why they chose that. And then I told God to help me understand so that I could help someone else, so that I could equip people to do what they needed to do, And so he did that for us in different ways. And I would say that me and Jessica, we really also, we had the navigation of being able to speak. That was one thing that was very prominent for us. And I have to also give credit to God first, and then also to who God made us to be, and also my dad, because he allowed us to speak. It wasn't a situation of being able to just be in silence. And I think a lot of people have struggled with emotions because there's a thing called sexual silence, and then there's a thing called emotional silence. And emotional silence is where you just want to be numb. You don't speak on anything, and you don't allow yourself to say what's actually going on with you. And so due to that, you lose yourself in a lot of ways, you know? And so conversation to us was always open. The dialogue in our family, and dialogue with you, it's always been open. So I say that people being able to grow in this, if you are facing hardship of any kind, the first thing is to be able to pray over yourself and find someone who can give sound advice to speak to. Because one of the things that I love in the Bible is he says, you must confess with your mouth and then believe in your heart. He doesn't say believe in your heart first. He says confess with your mouth first. And so I find that oftentimes people do not confess. They don't speak. They don't open their mouth. They don't go. And the other one is going to the source. It says to go to the source. You know, if you have a problem with anyone, that you need to go directly to them and speak to them. And people don't do that. So all of these things get layered up and trapped in life, and they're not speaking. And so it's necessary to speak so that you can have a sense of freedom and direction.
So we need to make something very, very clear, because you talked about that you were able to talk to me. So that means, and for you watching today, this is for you. You mean Pastor Warner's not this scary, intimidating, because you never have operated there. He's not this scary, intimidating figure.
That's my other daddy, period. That's easy. I mean, it's natural to me. And, you know, other people, I'm sure, you know, being aware of what they're aware of themselves, are scared because they know that you have discernment from God. So when you're looking at them, they're going, oh no, he sees it. And I'm going, you know, this is exactly what you want. But this is a man who has the character to speak to anyone. And it's easy for me to speak to you anytime. It's never been of a concern or a fear ever. I mean, you know, since day one, I'd follow you to your car and watch you do the Superman and get into the car. And I was like, yes, this is Dad.
And now I'm paying for it in two shot shoulders. But hey, it was worth it. It was worth it. So I think of that invitation. Jesus said, you know, let the children come to me. And young people today, to be able to come to Jesus is so critical, because what we're finding out, and behind all of the emotional problems, the mental problems, it isn't a surprise, because, like Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, it boils down to men have forgotten God. So, you know, let's talk about anxiety, depression, and all of these other things. There are backsliders maybe listening to us today, is you've tried to take on a secular mindset that makes no room for God. It makes no room for God speaking into your life. And that's having disastrous results. This is why we see the rise in teenage suicide, which is at, if statistics are to be believed, epidemic levels. It isn't too simplistic to say at the root of all these things is people have forgotten God, and a secular mindset is not satisfying. It's not giving people the answers, the discipline, the meaning that they need. I was reading a quote, And this isn't by a Christian. It's by Erica Commissar, who is a psychoanalyst, an author. And so she's not a Christian, but she has strong religious beliefs in this. She said nihilism. And so tell me if I get the name, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Right.
And nihilism is essentially the philosophy that life has no meaning. Things have no purpose. Well, she wrote, nihilism is fertilizer for anxiety and depression. The belief in God, in a protective and guiding figure to rely on when times are tough, is one of the best means of support for kids in an increasingly pessimistic world.
Yeah.
So, in other words, you girls, Gabe, even if you fought against it, and all of our crew.
You seem to be all under, 19 years old?
Yeah, all of the crew today that are all in the background, and we appreciate all of you. These kids, I call everybody kids, but they're making things happen. They're making things possible today. But it's because they've been raised with a mindset, God is real.
Right. Yeah.
And if you'll let him into your life, he'll help you in your mind and in your emotions. Yeah. Hey, there may be struggles. There's going to be battles. You got to put on your armor every day.
Yeah.
But when all is said and done, you're going to end up being a winner.
You talk about nihilism and just kind of the Jewish worldview. You think about just one of the most horrific things that ever happened in human history, the Holocaust in the 40s.
Yes.
And then what happens in just a couple of years after that, just the birth of the Jewish state. And I heard someone talking about how the collective Jewish consciousness state, they actually suppressed the memory in Israel itself, and they wouldn't talk about it. But they eventually began to have to began to face it down. But it was in the light of building this new life, building this new country, and finding their own identity and in God and in what God had called them to do. And I think what you're saying to young people who are facing anxiety and depression and all these fatigues in their life is that you're going to have to find some identity in God and find a purpose for your life. Your purpose can't be doom scrolling and getting likes on social. No wonder you're depressed, right? Because that's pretty shallow.
Yes.
But finding more than what you have, I believe is the key.
Yes, and so Georgia, Jessica, we're on a little bit of a roll. I just wanted to throw before we conclude today's episode, and we've already, we've talked a lot about anxiety, depression in the context of mental and emotional health, but there are a couple of other less obvious and conspicuous things that I thought I'd ask you about. And knowing that some of your clients come from the corporate world, et cetera, is I read about two things, and they do relate back to emotional well-being, is one is that in this extended pandemic period, another new phrase called decision fatigue. And it's referring to we're living now in a rapidly changing landscape because of what we're facing is brand new. We've never had to face down a pandemic before. Having to make those kind of decisions on the fly and right now can be a little taxing. So maybe you can just preach to me.
Yeah. Well, see, the first thing is, since being as though it's you or a corporate individual, and you being no different in that realm, is just being actually even higher in the regard of what you've had to encounter all throughout years, But I think one of the main things that I can apply here is, one thing my dad always told me was, Georgia, slow down. And so that was something that really spoke to me, because I like to do things from the go, the next. But what in learning the slowing down pace, it keeps you in the knowledge, like we spoke of earlier, the pause, right? But so what I would say to this is that you being as though you have all these different variations of people and personalities and ideas and all these different minds that are putting in their thoughts, you are the one who has to be able to look and see that you're in position to receive. And what that means is you're in position to receive from God. So you always are aligning yourself on that field as that in that playbook as where you need to be so that you can make the touchdown. So what that means is, imagine yourself as a driver on the bus. You have all these different people coming on your bus. They're saying they have to go to this stop, this place, that place. They're saying, oh my goodness, you're driving too slow. We were supposed to be here at this time and now we're not. And what's going on? So they're frustrated. They're frustrated from one thing to the next. And so, but the bus driver's sole job is to continue to drive and to just continue to go as he sees fit to the next stop, to the next stop, to the next stop. So as you have positioned yourself under God, now that is the main focus, that you will be able to stay in position accordingly. So while all these different things are coming in at you, it's welcome. Thank you so much. But we're going to assess each of you as it comes, as I speak, as it's necessary, as your stop comes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get to each of them. You're not going to be alone in these things or whatever. But one of the things to also remember is, just because it's their emergency doesn't mean it's your emergency. So just because it is, we have to do this right now, that doesn't mean that we have to do this right now. That might be what you have to do right now, And so the thing is that their wills are not in the focus as to what God's will is and what you have the insight for that. And then you direct as that's necessary. And so it kind of gives you a relieving ability to go, this is how we're going to do this, and be able to follow and execute as the passengers continue to get off the bus, and they'll come to their stop, and God will lead and guide and direct them as follows too, but your sole position is just to drive that bus and to stay in position to keep receiving what you need to do next.
Well, shout out to all the bus drivers in our land. This is the first. I've never been likened to a bus driver, but hey, I understand that we're on we're going someplace. God is helping us. He's in control. This isn't a time of self-justification, but folks, all I've been doing as a pastor during this season is just try to drive the bus. That means keeping it on the road, keeping it moving in the right direction. And in the process, for me, I've had some crises this year. It's amazing. We're building, a huge conference center in the middle of a pandemic. Think that through. But I thank you for that, because you can't let the urgent, all those things that are, pulling at you, divert you from the important. And so God has the answers that you need. And our prayer for your soul to be well is that you would listen to him. And let's broaden this, whether you are a young person or much older. Jesus' invitation is still the same. He said, come unto me. All you that labor and are heavy laden, I'll give you rest. We encourage you to do that. We're going to pick up on this theme next week. We're so glad to have Mental Finesse, Georgia and Jessica with us today. And remember, as always, I've got to say this, the promo stuff of like us on whatever podcast you're listening. Give us 5 stars. Hey, is it okay to say that Larry Reed used to say this, you can't lose
With the stuff we use.
with the stuff we use. And so help us out. We thank you for that. See you next week.